unfortunate things.
The shadow of Rome is vast, and you will yet die under it to the roar of the crowd.
Why are you here?
Because I trusted in the honor of a Roman.
You have a woman.
Taken from me when I was captured.
I see things in men that they themselves have lost. I give it breath until it ignites. How many men would you kill to hold your wife again?
I would kill them all.
Gladiator does not fear death.
Gladiators' virtues extend beyond the arena. As lovers, they're said to be ravenous beasts. Make him do it again.
I swear to be burned, chained, beaten, or die by the sword. They cheer for blood, and they shall have it.
A man must accept his fate, or be destroyed by it.
Hello and welcome to a very hot, sweaty, boiling day in London, Capua of the south of England. We are recreating the weather conditions from episode 5 of Spartacus today in London. Well, the weather conditions at the beginning of the episode. Apologies for this stream being delayed from Sunday. We normally do this on Sunday at 8 o'clock, but some of our panel were not available at the right time yesterday. So myself and the Inside Man did an impromptu episode of Chew the Fat on Cold War movies and such, TV shows. That is up on the channel. You can check that out. It was pretty good, actually. I've been meaning to do that for a while. We just kind of did it impromptu, worked out really well. Lots of discussion about Red Dawn, America, Threads, the day after, World War III, all of those fun shows, which somehow seem very relevant today. I'm on with my usual co-host, Blue Collar Loser. How are you?
Good. Actually, it sucks. Our buddy Bro is busy, but yeah, Lance. I mean, we're in episode 5 and 6, and boy, I think the show is it's growing. I don't know. I mean, every episode's getting better and better, and I had a really good time making stills for these 2 episodes.
Well, for me, this is the episode where the show really kicks up a gear, both in the quality of. I'm going to talk about how this is a really good example of a perfect script. But before we get into all that, let's bring in the rest of our panelists. Straight from his hidden bunker in deepest Hertfordshire, we have the Inside Man.
Good evening. How are you?
Not too bad. How are you, sir?
Warm. So I'm now sporting an ice lolly and or popsicle for our American cousins, and a pint of gin and tonic.
Oh.
I may well be nipping out to get an ice lolly shortly. Last but by no means least, also in a rather hot place in the world at the moment, we have fresh from eating his burger, Leroy Peters in the house.
How you guys doing?
Yeah, we're good.
Good.
So
mate.
good to see you. Good to see you, Leroy. Right. Well, we're gonna get into this episode. As we go through it, for a change, I am going to do a detailed breakdown of this particular script, like I did with Band of Brothers. So I'm going to go through episode 5 first in some detail, and episode 6 will cover in less detail. Today, though, normally we cover both episodes at the same time. Today, I want to spend more time on episode 5, and I want to do them individually. So the meat of this episode will be about episode 5. We'll kind of do a quick roundup of episode 6. We're not here until 2 a.m. But let's just go through it, and we'll be rating each episode as usual out of 10, and we'll also be doing the special History Bro rating of gayness out of 10. A new thing we're going to do for each episode. 1 being not gay at all, and 10 being super oily gay. So yeah, okay, we'll get into that. So, Spartacus, Blood and Sand, Shadow Games. It's directed by Michael Hurst. The writers on the show are Miranda Kwok, Stephen Esternight, of course, who is the creator and showrunner, and Todd Helbing. But this episode is really, the majority of this is Miranda Kwok's work. I have to say the dialogue in this episode I think is awesome. Some great priceless lines. And like I said at the beginning, this episode is a really good example of a really good script. I mean, within the first 2 minutes of this episode, it's all about setup. We re-established that not only is it incredibly hot still in Capua, but this house is running out of water. They've barely got any rations of water left. People are collapsing because of the heat, and so on. Batiatus's debts are re-established with the exchanges of dialogue between him and his wife. So you're already setting up in the first 2 minutes that everyone's exhausted. There's almost no water left at the villa, let alone in the city, and that the debts are overwhelming him. But there's a small piece of good news on the horizon. Big games are being held in Capua to appease the gods and hopefully bring an end to the drought. The magistrate Calabius, who we haven't met yet, is going to be overseeing the Primus, and the Primus is the opening of games, and is going to be visiting the villa to select some men. So this is good news. Batiatus is pleased. He's hoping that his gladiators will be picked for the Primus, and if the games work, the drought will end. Meanwhile, Barker and Asher are searching for the hired assassins. These are the assassins that tried to take Batiatus a couple of episodes ago. They are known by a certain mark on their skin. They suspect that this individual who's on the screen now might know who knows the owners of this mark, and he's given a closer inspection of the mark Yeah, that's a pretty grim moment.
It's probably mealworms, I guess. And
those are real maggots. I can tell you now.
Wow.
Those are real maggots in that shot.
Right.
He must have he must have to go to the doctor after that scene.
Well, actually, if you eat them, they're pretty nutritious, you know. So I don't think they can give you anything as long as they're stored correctly. So then we cut to the magistrate arriving at the villa. There's some other stuff going on, flirting between characters and things, but I'm not going to get every detail. Now, the magistrate, hold on that still for a moment, please. This is the actor John Back. For those of you who think I've seen him in something, but I can't remember what, there was a 3-part Australian drama series made in the 1980s. I think it came out around 85. It's called The Great Bookie Robbery. I believe the entire thing is on YouTube. I actually have the DVD set. It's available as a DVD. It's a 3-part miniseries on the biggest robbery that took place in Australian history. Pretty close to the truth of the actual historical event. John Back plays the leader of the gang robbers in that show. If you haven't seen it, it's fantastic, and Back is brilliant. It's the first time I'd ever seen him in anything. I was like, "Who is this guy?" You know.
Also, Lance, I've seen him in just let you know, Netflix has a docuseries called The Roman Empire, where a lot of people from Sparta who are
in Spartacus have got little roles in it.
So has the guy who plays Salonius.
Yeah. So the magistrate turns up. As I said, he's played by John Back. Whose phone's going off?
Yeah, that's mine. Sorry about that.
It's all right, mate. We just mute yourself or I'll do it. Batiatus is pleased, but then suddenly Salonius steps out behind him, and we realise that they're visiting together, which is a bit unfortunate. The magistrate compliments Batiatus on his father, who, of course, we know has passed away. And Salonius undercuts this compliment with, we've never seen his like since. It's a really, really cutting and telling line. But the big news is that Theocles is going to actually be the main event at the Primus. This is an undefeated 7-foot giant of a gladiator. And Spartacus and Crixus are chosen to face him. The way that those choices come about is also kind of manipulated, partly by Salonius, partly by Lucretia. So very, very interesting. In the meantime, Barker informs Batiatus that someone from outside Capua is responsible for the assassination attempt, because the slaves bared the mark of somebody from outside the town. They were purchased in the north. We have a little scene between Navia and Crixus where she gives some water to him. There's a nice line between them where Crixus says, "Wait for a moment." And she says, "For what purpose?" And his reply is, "Need there be one?" I really like that exchange. It's basically what he's saying is spending a moment of time with you is enough. It's like one of the small pleasures that he gets, even if they touch each other briefly. I think it's really well played. Spartacus and Crixus meet, have a bit of a discussion. Spartacus basically says to Crixus, "If we do not come to common ground, the death shared will be ours." And we cut to Barcus and Petrus, Maximum Gainus, and we notice that Ammonaeus has his eye on Petrus. So that sets up something that's coming later in the show. In the meantime, Inside Man's favourite character arrives, Ilithia, and she's the self-entitled rich bitch wife of Glabus.
Nice rack, though.
And indeed,
that was excellent. Yeah,
she has a great line where they talk about honor, and she says, "I would trade honor for water." And I thought that's a really nice, another really nice line. They watch the training. There's various kind of little things going on between people. We cut to then a bit of, in brackets, very gay wrestling between Crixus and Spartacus before they're paraded in front of Ilithia, during which time she taunts Spartacus. Of course, Spartacus knows that she is the wife of the man who is responsible for him becoming a slave and parting him from his wife. So again, these are all big stakes in this story, all playing out in these scenes that cause maximum tension between the various characters' narratives. Spartacus is taken away to talk to Batiatus. In the meantime, Ilithia has Crixus remove all his clothes. And then you've got this great scene, even though it's sort of very sexual and there's nudity in it. What happens in this scene plays out in front of Navia, who Crixus is in love with. Lucretia, who loves Crixus, has to watch Ilithia, who is fascinated with him, admiring the gladiator the way someone admires a new jacket and wants to try it on. That's the way I made notes about that scene. So there's a really good dynamic going on in that scene, and it's all on Lucretia's face in that still. How much she actually despises this girl, and the way that their entire relationship, their entire friendship is entirely codependent on various things that they want from each other, but she absolutely hates this woman. This is also very important because you start to see how attached she is to Crixus on a deeper level, which becomes important later. Batiatus and Spartacus discuss the Primus, and Barker returns with Remus, slaves bearing his mark, and we find out after a bit of torturing from Batiatus that he sold them to the cousin of the magistrate. So this is the cousin of John Back's character, somebody we haven't met yet. In the meantime, Doctore continues to train the gladiators. When he gets a moment, Asher warns Spartacus not to trust Crixus and tells him that he's responsible for him being a cripple, which of course at the time we didn't know because Gods of the Arena hadn't come out yet, but that whole storyline is covered in the prequel Gods of the Arena,
which was a good prequel.
It is. If you've never watched this show, if you're tuning in and you've never watched it, you should watch it in order. You should watch the prequel first.
That's what I do. I watch the prequel first, then Spartacus, Blood and Sand.
Absolutely. And when you rewatch it, it's better if you do it that way.
Lance, I love the scene showing all his scars, that he's the only person to survive. He didn't beat him, but just surviving is an honor in itself.
That's right. And that's why I think the crowd let him live. So he's the only one who's stood before Theocles and survived. And Doctore is basically trying to get them to work together. And of course, the two of them are being stubborn as hell. Then we have this scene with the priestess, with Lucretia. So Lithia has brought her own priestess to Lucretia to help her facilitate her becoming pregnant. The dialogue in this scene is so evil. It's at one point Lithia goes, "Do you mean there's something wrong with her?" Like, and then, you know, the priestess sort of senses how uncomfortable Lucretia is and says, "Well, this should probably be continued in private." And she's like, "Oh no, let me stay." And she knows that Lucretia can't send her out because it's at her favor that this priestess is here, because she hasn't got money to pay for this priestess, because we've established that they've got no money. So this is Alithia is paying for this. And we've got the delightful penis candle. I made a note about that.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I know what to get Inside Man for Christmas now. So
cheers. Thanks very much.
Lance, if you do that for Inside Man, I hope he beats living daylights out of you.
Mate, obviously it won't be as small as that. I'll get you a bigger one. Then we cut to the house of Levidius. Now, Levidius is the cousin of the magistrate. I can't recall if we've seen Levidius in the show up to now. I don't think we have.
We have.
Was it like a brief scene in the market or something?
Yeah.
I don't remember meeting him before, but
I do.
It's got to be really brief.
Spartacus owes Levidius money for the grain.
Right.
And then when they were in the
yes, no, I remember. Yeah, and he comes and asks him, and he gives him another week or something like that.
Yeah,
it's the same guy, isn't it?
He shows up in the pit.
Yeah. Okay, I didn't recognize him because he's kind of shot in different light and whatnot. So basically, Batiatus has got into the house, and I mean, I love the way this scene starts. It starts with this guy Levidius discovering his wife with her throat slit and a couple of his slaves, presumably, and maybe one of his guards. And then he looks up and he sees Batiatus waiting with his child, his son. So, you know, he's forced to admit that he was responsible for hiring the men, but Salonius, basically it was all on the instructions of Salonius, who paid the balance of his debt. So his debt is actually now settled, even though he didn't know his debts were settled. He sort of tells him this on the promise that Batiatus won't kill him. Batiatus says he won't, and then Barca kills him. Barca is ordered to kill the child as well, but we don't see the child being killed. That's quite important.
Thank God.
Yeah. And we cut back to Crixus and Spartacus sort of talking of the fight and you know, what it might mean and all the rest of it. And there's a little bit of a parting of the sort of anger between them, suggesting they may well work in tandem. Then Domina sends for Crixus. She says, "We don't have much time, and I would see it well used." But basically, while she's had this magic potion and been told to have sex within the hour so that a child seed might take root, but Crixus begs favor. Love makes a man weak before battle. And so she was like, "Well, I would have you strong." I mean, she really wants him, but she can't. Now, this is a really important scene. It's important because we can see, and Lucy Lawless plays it brilliantly. She emotionally crosses the line with him in this scene. She kisses him. We can see she loves him. And then when she doesn't get to consummate with him, because she really wants a child with him, I think, because she believes the child will be stronger. 100%. She cries, she sobs, she weeps. So this is why we know this is emotionally this has gone too far. She's now in love with Crixus. We know this. So Crixus kind of plays his part well, but then on the way back to the cell, he ends up making out with Navia, and Navia says, "Well, you know, doesn't love make a man weak before battle? Love can give a man hope in the right arms." God, isn't that the truth?
Yeah. So, well, and it's even more so when it's like he also couldn't get it up for Lucretian either. That's even more of an insult as well.
He couldn't. That is Crixus's other name, Bickus. That's right. Well observed, so then we cut to Spartacus and Navarro. They have a brief discussion about the odds, and various people are betting coin. And it's quite important that it's established more than once that Barca has placed a big wager on both Crixus and
Spartacus.
Spartacus winning against Theocles, whereas everyone else is
Putting
thinking
their money on Theocles.
Yeah. But Barker thinks they'll win, so he's wagered a big coin with Asher on this. Before the game, this is the first time we meet the character on the left, who is the son of the magistrate. This character is very important. He's going to play a big role in the show. I forget his name.
I'm already disliking him.
Yeah, I like the actor who plays him. I think he plays him really well because
he's got to be at least in his late 20s or 30s now.
Yeah, but he's like this sort of self-entitled rich kid, basically, which is. But before the game starts, an important piece of information is imparted. The magistrate mentions the death of his cousin Levidius, and that the whole villa was sort of set on fire. The boys presumed to have perished in the fire. And Batiatus has a great line where he looks very pointedly at Salonius and says, "What on earth could have caused such an act?" Other thing that's important here is that it's established that Batiatus is now actually out of water, and he's forced to take some from Salonius, who offers it to him, and with the line, "You'd do the same if you were able." So insulting, but the dialogue is so good. So then we get into the fight with Theocles. Spartacus and Crixus work together quite effectively. They wound him several times. They appear to take him down. The crowd starts to celebrate, but it's all faint, and Theocles stands up and says, "Capua, shall I begin?" At this point, Crixus is actually injured because they're now that for this moment they're no longer fighting as one. They've kind of
the pride's taken over.
Yeah, Crixus gets complacent. His ego sort of is a bit wounded, and so on. Crixus gets the sword right through Theocles, but is then fatally injured, falls to the ground. But just as Spartacus goes to attack him, Crixus uses his helmet, his discarded helmet, to catch the shine of the sun, blinding Theocles' eyes, which gives Spartacus a brief advantage that he uses to maximum effect and mortally wounds Theocles before beheading him. This is the first really sort of big proper arena fight that we see in the show, apart from the one with Spartacus before and sort of some brief stuff. I think it's a great scene. We'll talk about it later. And then the clouds turn grey. There's a clap of thunder, which I'm hoping will happen in London any moment. And rain comes to Capua, and the crowd begins to call his name. There's also much shots of boobage in the crowd.
They tried to
and and I think after this, it's not mentioned in this episode, but I think they call him Rainmaker, don't they?
The bringer of rain.
Bringer of rain. That's it.
Also, Lance, sorry to interrupt. It's the guy who plays Theocles. I looked him up a long time ago. Cliff DeYoung is his name. It turns out he was an MMA fighter. Wow. Not a very good one.
Cliff DeYoung played Theocles. I know that actor. He's been in
not Cliff DeYoung, Cliff DeJong. I think it's
Cliff DeYoung. Cliff DeYoung's a different actor. I was going to say, but he must have had a lot of makeup on because
and I know which one you're talking about. He ain't that tall in real life.
No,
Cliff DeJong. I think it's DeJong. He's from New Zealand. He was an MMA fighter, not a very good one. His record speaks for itself. In other words,
his name is Ruben de Jong, not
Cliff. Ruben de Jong. My bad.
Ruben de Jong. Yeah. He hasn't got a huge number of acting credits, but he's played things like Orc Brute and Hellrider in Warrior's Way. Warrior's Way is a good show. We can do another whole thing about that. He's good. That is that episode. Episode 6 is Delicate Things, which we'll talk about later. So, this episode of Spartacus, Blood and Sand. Let's get into it. Let's talk about this first.
Gladiator does not fear death.
Gladiator's virtues extend beyond the arena. As love.
Okay, so I have to tell you, despite my vigorous research, there is no record of a fighter called Theocles. So Theocles, as far as I can tell, is made up for this show. I checked that with History Bro as well, who still is available for research opportunities. And yeah, he said he can't find any record of him. Inside Man, were you able to find anything?
No, nothing at all. But I'm sure that there will be some that come up in later episodes that we might be able to identify. Maybe not necessarily of this period, actually, but because there are some fairly clear records of the names of a number of gladiators, and it's mainly from the graffiti.
Yeah.
I mean, there was, they were big on their graffiti, especially with their support of particular gladiators. So, and again, Pompeii probably that's the one location that will give you some really, really good examples of Roman graffiti. This gladiator is better than this gladiator, and so and so. We support so and so and so and so, and if you want to win some money, put your money on this gladiator. But there's thousands and thousands of pieces of graffiti like that, not just in Pompeii, but those are the best examples, but also around Rome as well.
Yeah, I've been to the Colosseum in Rome.
Yeah, same here.
I haven't been to Pompeii.
Excuse me.
I've been to Italy. I've been to Rome, Venice, Milan. And
yeah, I've done Milan. Well, let's stick to areas that are in the film.
What I want to say is we have to remember from a historical perspective, before they started the war, Spartacus, Crixus, Animaeus, who's Doctore, and Gannicus were all gladiators before they started the rebellion. Mm-hmm. So while there's not from what I could find, there wasn't much research of their lives as gladiators.
There's nothing other than to say they were good. That's it. There's nothing other than to say that they were good.
Exactly.
That's the only. Well, it implies that they were good, but you don't really know, but you assume. So that's all I've been able to discover. Yeah. So so I mean, in terms of history, there's nothing we can point to in this episode and say, well, this actually did happen or this actually didn't happen, other than, yes, there would have been fights like this.
Yeah.
Theocles is very much a fictional character and, yeah, a bit too monster-like to be a real person. But I don't think that matters in the context of this show. It sort of works. It's kind of got a toe in the territory of Ray Harryhausen a little bit, and I mean a toe. But
and I suppose I was going to say, you have to look at, if you look at the very first fight that Maximus has in Gladiator with that big guy, he's almost kind of beast-like. Yeah. Something very bested about that character as well, his armor and his build and everything. I don't think it's out of the realms of possibility that something like this, that fights like this did happen. I think we know that fights like this almost certainly did happen.
And I with
these characters, we don't know.
And just recently, I just watched that show, Those About to Die. The Giant, played by Martin Ford. I mean, that I don't want to call it a Spartacus ripoff. I mean, like Spartacus, it was based on the characters. Anthony Hopkins and his sons were real people. But again, Hollywood taking liberties with history, mainly because there's not much to go on. So
I think Those About to Die is probably more accurate than this.
Yeah, I mean that comes from. I mean, there are in terms of Spartacus, as History Bro had said, there are fewer than 1,000 words dedicated to the life of Spartacus in Plutarch's histories. But with Those About to Die, although it's a fictional account of something that we kind of know happened, so Vespasian was a real character, and
his sons ruled Rome,
and the sons ruled Rome. Yeah, it's kind of playing fast and loose with history. So it's a fictionalized, a fictionalized interpretation of an historical event. So it does have historical characters in there, and for the most part, there are some really, really quite accurate little factoids in there. Some really, really good tiny little things that are definitely 100% accurate. In terms of the rest of the characters, we don't know. I mean, they're really figments of the author's imagination, the original author of the original book. But in terms of Spartacus, it's just such a shame that we don't have that much information.
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to what I said a couple of episodes ago. History was written by those who hanged heroes. There's a reason why the Romans didn't want to have certain aspects of or a detailed life of the Spartacus and his rebellion, because he, like I said, for 3 years he was
better period
empire.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But also with people like Suetonius, who did his history of the Caesars, we know that he was drawing from other pieces of information, and other writers also were drawing from other pieces of information, which unfortunately are lost. It's, if you can imagine a modern day historian researching something, and all of that research material suddenly gets lost after he's written that, then that would be the only account that we actually have. So it's, these people have been working from lost research sources. On the other hand, you have people like Seneca, whose writings were of the day. It was about his time. Cicero, the letters of Cicero, and the natural histories of Pliny the Elder, and the letters of Pliny the Younger. I mean, they're all contemporary records of those, and contemporary accounts of those particular times. Whereas others, including Tacitus, they do draw on other pieces of material that that they do reference. And also Tacitus is incomplete as well. I think there's something like 6 of Tacitus's books that are missing. I mean, History Bro will probably clarify that a little bit more, but there's quite a few books within his, something like a 37 volume work that he did. So there are gaps.
In terms of the story for this show, sticking to that for a second and putting the history on pause, this episode advances everything massively. The stakes are hugely raised. There's a possibility that Spartacus's wife might soon be with him. There's if he wins in this competition, for Batiatus's Lutus, it's going to be huge, and he's told about that when he has his meeting with Batiatus. So the stakes for Spartacus in this episode are raised. The stakes for Crixus in this episode are raised. The stakes for Lucretia in this episode are raised.
And the stakes for Batiatus is raised.
Yeah,
too.
well, he's got the biggest stakes of all. Then you've also, if you look at all the minor characters as well, the stakes for Asher are raised because he's taken a huge bet, which he thinks he's going to win. The stakes for Barker are raised because the reason he's placed that bet is because he plans to buy his freedom and leave with his lover. So it's really good the way that all of that ties in. Extremely, extremely clever writing. And most of those stakes are all set up in the first 10 minutes of this episode. And they're only taken higher. We get to see the sadistic nature of Batiatus when he kills somebody with his bare hands, which is in this scene here. But then he's also trying to sort of show Spartacus he's honorable, so Spartacus will do the right thing. It's really, really good episode.
And this was sorry, I beg your pardon. Please go ahead.
And that's why I like John Hannah, because it's like, as I know I mentioned it earlier in the last podcast, John Hannah has developed, and Lucy Lawless have developed the Robin Williams, Denzel Washington mode or effect, because John Hannah, most people, for me, the only other time I've seen him was in the Mummy movies where he plays a buffoon. And Lucy Lawless is best known for Xena Warrior Princess. So for them to play this kind of role, it's especially in this scene where John Hannah is basically beating the living daylights out of the guy that tried to kill him with a cup. And Lucy Lawless is just a manipulative, evil, what.
She's such great fun to watch, though.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch. I mean,
I love her scenes. Her scenes are amazing.
Was Spartacus ever nominated for an Emmy?
I don't know.
Because if it wasn't, it's a shame. Because John Hannah and Lucy Lawless definitely would have deserved for Best Actor and Best Actress.
Well, we're gonna talk about the acting. We're going to talk about the acting in a minute when we go do cast and characters. That'll be the next point. Let's stick with the story.
All right, sorry.
That's all right. Inside Man, jump in, and then
Yeah,
after him, Blue.
Yeah, what I was going to say was this. I mean, you know my opinions of the first 4 episodes, and they weren't particularly shining. But when I watched this 5th episode, I thought, my God, is this the same show? Is this really the same show that I've been watching and been so disparaging about?
Yeah.
And it just it completely floored me. I wasn't expecting to enjoy these 2 episodes as much as I have. And in terms of John Hannah, well, I take everything back. I mean, I thought that he was absolutely terrible in the earlier episodes. I thought his delivery was awful, but in this, my God, I mean, the guy really does act. And what I love about what he did and what was done with his character, how his character was written, was that you kind of like him. You feel like he's redeeming himself. But every time you get to the point where you feel that he's redeeming himself, then we go straight back to zero, and he's a complete asshole all over again, and he's somebody that you hate. But they have that push-pull written for him, that really intense pushing and pulling with his character, where you kind of feel slightly uncomfortable liking him, and you'll get into like him, and you're seeing a softer, or what you believe is to be a softer, kinder side to the character, and all of a sudden, wham, he's not the man that we were maybe hoping that he was going to be.
That's why I didn't like episode 6, but more on that later.
Yeah, and it was the same with Lucy Lawless as well. I mean, goodness me. I mean, you in a weird way, you love the character, but then you just thoroughly loathe her. It's that weird combination of that tugging at you, constant sort of tugging at you. 1 minute you love this person, next minute you absolutely hate them. And
Yeah,
this is brilliant.
She's somebody you would want working a room on your behalf at a business meeting.
Yeah.
But whether you'd want to be married to her for life, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Ilithia, as annoying as she is, and even the portrayal, I guess we'll come on to that in the next section. I think it works because she's got to be very different from Lucretia for these scenes to work with these two. If they were too similar, the characters, it wouldn't work. She's just so spoilt and entitled, and
she's got an amazing art, though.
And she knows she's got one over Lucretia because she's got endless access to money and resources, and she knows she's got things that Lucretia needs or wants. So she's always pushing the envelope with her. She's always pushing for the favors she asks, like even with the whole ceremony with the kind of witch doctor lady or whatever you want to call her, medicus woman. She shouldn't be present for that sort of thing. That's completely improper. But she's just demands to stay like an excited child, not because she really wants to know about it, but because she knows that if she stays, she'll get information on Lucretia, and that information will be useful. And she does get information that Lucretia's got a lover. That's a really important plot point that comes out, and Lucretia's kind of forced to admit it because she has to tell the truth because she wants to be certain she can get a baby. That's her big mission. So
I still don't buy her as an actor. I just don't. I think she acts just like a Valley girl to me. It's like she's playing the part as a Valley girl.
Leroy's been put under her jug spell, so he's
no. It's like I don't like the character. It's like, but I don't know if you guys ever watched Xena Warrior Princess or seen any of the Mummy movies.
Yeah.
But to come from where Lucy Lawless and John Hannah were coming from, it's the exact same thing what Robin Williams did with Good Will Hunting and what Denzel Washington did with Training Day. That's why I call it the Robin Williams, Denzel Washington method, because you're playing a role which no one expected you to play and do so well. And I think John Hannah and Lucy Lawless have done so well because I hated their characters. And believe it or not, I actually wanted, after episode 5, I actually wanted to like John Hannah. To pick it back on what Inside Man was saying, I actually wanted to like Batiatus, but after episode 6, which we'll talk about later, I completely hated him. In fact, to be honest with you, the only honorable person I thought in this entire show was Doctore Animaeus. Even though Spartacus is the main character, it goes with the reason why I don't like episode 6. He's not as honorable as he likes to portray himself, but I can understand why he is the way he is. Crixus is a complete prick, and that's probably the only historical accuracy in this whole show is that Spartacus and Crixus were not bosom buddies as we saw in the Kirk Douglas Spartacus. It still amazes me how Spartacus managed to hold on to an army of over between 70 to 100,000 people that didn't get along together, but they still managed to be a thorn in the side of the Roman Empire. So, but you got to appreciate the acting from Lucy Lawless and John Hannah in this. But like the only honorable person I see in this whole first season is Varro and Doctore.
But let's stick with story. We're not on characters yet. Chris, you got anything you want to say about the story before we move on to that?
You guys covered a thing. One little, I guess, kind of subplot in a sense was Spartacus and Crixus, because Crixus, like, you still think that life is going to exist outside of, being a slave. And he's like, all you care about is being a slave. And at the very end, it pays off before they fight the big dude, because he's like, this love you have for your wife, is that why you're free to die? And he's like, yeah, basically. So now Crixus, like, you know what? Maybe like Spartacus has something. Maybe he's onto something. Maybe if I love this slave girl, it'll actually make me a better man. And maybe life is outside these walls, because all Crixus knows is just being a slave. Spartacus, Spartacus, like, why are you doing this for? He's like, well, for glory. But what else? What's your purpose in life? Like, I'm trying to get back to my wife and get out of here. All you care about is being a gladiator. But now Crixus is slowly falling in love with a new woman. He's like, damn, maybe Spartacus, maybe there is more to life than just being a slave until I die.
Yeah, that's
absolutely
really
brilliant. I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that, Chris, because it was something that was sort of bubbling at the back of my head as well. That's the only life he knows. That's all he knows how to be. And he's kind of doing his best. He's doing what he knows, and that's it. I think he wants to be a better person. He does want to be a better person. But that's the only life that he knows at the moment.
It's funny. I want to talk about irony. I'm being very careful not to get off subject, but for a lot of my ancestors here in America, when slavery ended, the hardest part for a lot of us who were newly freed slaves is like, all right, we're free. What now? What do we do? We didn't know what to do with freedom.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very difficult for a lot of my ancestors to basically take one step in front of the other. So I don't like Crixus. He's a prick, but slavery is the only thing he knows. And
what's happening here with this relationship with Spartacus is, in a subtle way, and I think this is where Blue was right to bring this up, is Spartacus is beginning to humanize him again.
Yeah.
And he sees the feelings that Spartacus has for his woman. At first, he thinks that's a weakness, but then he says it himself in this episode to Navia. Love can give a man hope, or comfort can give a man hope.
Yeah.
And we can see that he's falling in love with Navia. Navia's in love with him. Lucretia has fallen in love with Crixus. She kind of played it very cold with him at the beginning of the series, like he was functional, but he wasn't. It was a plaything, but she didn't have emotion for him. Now we can see that that's changed. So that's why that scene, even though it's oh look, Crixus has got his willy out again scene. That scene serves a real purpose.
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, he's kind of humiliated. He has an opportunity not to go to the arena, but he says no. He turns it down. Nothing would make me. That's what he wants. He wants the glory of fighting in the arena against Theocrates.
And I think that's the only thing worth dying for. That's the only freedom we'll ever know.
But I think you, Leroy, had actually said something that's really quite excuse me, a really important point, which and it's kind of made me think. You're absolutely spot on with this, and what it is that Crix is kind of institutionalized.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
He wouldn't know what to do when if freedom, when and if freedom comes. He's so institutionalized, and I think you know Leroy, I think in what he said has really quite illustrated that in a much better way than me. Really articulated that far better than me. But um, yeah, I think that in essence is what he is. He's been institutionalized.
Yeah, and also his pride is what almost gets him killed because now that
Mm,
because like, now the crowd is chanting Crixus, Crixus, and big guy gets back up and real quick, oh, hey Spartacus, get out of my way. He's like, oh, and now Cappy Wood is
Yeah.
like he's like give ground, kill myself. Now he wants to fight him 1-on-1. Crixus can't beat this guy 1-on-1, and Spartacus
mm.
only wins because Crixus was deflecting with the light and shining his eye.
Exactly.
The whole point is you guys need to be a team. That's why Crixus, his pride almost got him killed, and man.
And just for record, that was one of the first things they taught us in boot camp: teamwork, work as one. And one of the things they showed was the first scene from Gladiator when Maximus said, "If we work together, we have a better chance of living."
Mm.
They taught us that in boot camp. If we work together, we have a better chance of making it.
I learned teamwork by watching one of those skits on Sesame Street where there was all to do with teamwork. Obviously, they could have shown this; that would have worked as well. Not sure it would have gone down well with the parents at that particular time.
He takes some damage right here, man.
Yeah.
Well, don't forget we've got a section on sex and violence, so we'll come on to that in a minute. But first,
I swear to be burned, chained, beaten.
okay. So it is a very, very character-driven narrative. Episode 5. I know it's quite hard to pick out a standout actor, but I do like the presence of John back in this episode because, first of all, he's a first-class actor. Spent the majority of his career in Australia, but I believe is originally English-born. And as I said, people need to watch that show of his, the Great Bookie Robbery.
Can I just quickly interject? It's so weird that you happened to mention that because only 2 days ago I found that when I was looking for Australian movies, and I found a channel that actually had that on. So I've saved it for a watch later.
Oh, have you never seen it?
I've never seen it. No.
Well, you know what? I want to do a chew the fat on that. So when you've watched it, we'll do that.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
Yeah,
We'll maybe
sure.
do that on a Monday night or something. But
Okay, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, because I actually think it's a really good one of the best sort of mini series of the 80s, sort of especially true story mini series. I mean, some people may remember that he played the role of Madril in the original Lord of the Rings trilogy as well.
I remember. I only saw one of those movies once. I only saw those.
He was at the Battle of oh God, what's the city called? The one
Helm's Deep.
No, the city that's in front of Minas Tirith, the one on the river that's all in ruins. Where the Orcs use the landing barges to Osgiliath. He's in the Battle of Osgiliath. He's in charge of the soldiers in Osgiliath. He's the one who's injured, and the Orc executes him.
I don't.
That is gone back.
I only saw the Lord of the Rings once, but I agree with you. This guy is a good actor. Like I said, I've seen the only other time I've seen him was on either the Roman Empire docuseries on Netflix or on the History Channel, The Men Who Built America, The Frontiersmen. I think it was either him or Solonius that played President James Madison. It was one of those guys. But
what's funny about this series, right, is that in some ways, Andy Whitfield has got the hardest role, because what I've realized about rewatching this show is his role is basically he plays the straight man. That's his job. He's got to play Spartacus, kind of contained, fairly detached, always kind of plotting on the inside, but he's basically a straight man. He doesn't get the delicious lines. He doesn't get the fun moments. You get some good battle stuff and some good sort of glory stuff, but he doesn't get that delicious dialogue really. If there's a joke between him and Crixus normally gets the gag line, but all the lovely dialogue all goes to Batiatus, Lucretia, Salonius, all this kind of one-upmanship dialogue.
I think that's why his death was such a tragedy, man. I mean, he was so well loved. I just found out like years after his death, the guy who plays Crixus, Manu Bennett, and all the other gladiators, Barca, they all gathered together and he wasn't even dead yet, but he was very sick. And they all did a haka dance, which is traditional for the Maoris, because Manu Bennett is part Maori, in dedication to Andy Whitfield. I mean, his death really, really hurt a lot of people.
Yeah, I know. I think at his funeral, I believe it was mostly the gladiator cast that were carrying his coffin, I believe.
But Lance, you said Spartacus was never nominated for an Emmy.
No, I didn't say that.
Oh no, you said you weren't sure.
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't nominated, then that's a tragedy because, and I know Inside Man, you disagree with me on this, but John Hannah and Lucy Lawless's performance in Blood and Sand was superb. That they should have been nominated and won an Emmy for either best actor or best supporting actor or best actress, best supporting actor.
I'll see if it was nominated for anything. I suspect that the reason that it might not have been at that time may have been because of the adult nature of the show.
But this was where
I've seen shows that are way worse than that.
Yeah,
but I've never heard of Oz.
To be completely fair, I mean, this was the show that. Oh, sorry, these were the episodes where it really made me look up at the TV and watch this. Genuinely watch this and their performances. I thought both of their performances in these two episodes in particular were outstanding. I never disliked Lucy Lawless. I thought she was okay in the first 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I thought John Hannah in the first 4 episodes was probably passable. I didn't think it was exceptional, but this is where, particularly 5 and 6, I thought, my God, these guys are really, they've really kind of they've got me now. They've really got me now. But it's still Alithia. I can't abide her. I can't abide the actress. She's terrible.
I mean, you'll feel all the more gratified when she bites the farm. I mean, I've looked it up and I can't see any Emmy nominations or awards. I'm sure it probably got some Saturn awards, but there's nothing about it on the Wikipedia page.
That is so unjust
for the show. Anyway, pulling it back to characters and cast, I mean, because everybody gets to do something in this episode. Navarro probably gets to do the least, but he's got more screen time coming. Asher's scheming, we really get a sense of. We get Barker and his kind of storyline is set up again. That's good setup for what's coming down the road. There's more with Navia. There's a little bit more with Salonius. Salonius is one of my favorite characters in the show because he's so kind of always coming across as respectable, but always knows when to say the right line to put Batiatus down without.
That's why I don't like him.
Rude.
That's why I don't like him.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I like those kinds of characters. So, which character for you, Blue Collar Loser, is the standout in this episode? And you can say Theocles if you want.
Yeah, no, I'll still go Crixus because I do feel like everyone's got an arc, and I like where Crixus is going. And yeah, I do like, as Inside Man would say, being institutionalized, part of prison. I said, guys, I went in once, never coming back. That's it. I did meet individuals like sometimes these guys do 4 or 5. They will do 6 prison bids because once they get out, they don't know what life is like. They can't handle life on the outside. They actually come back in instead of going to the military. But some guys get socialized with the military. That's why they when they retire, they go crazy. So Crixus is getting a character arc, which I'm liking, and he's more complex than just being a simple stupid slave. I mean, he's getting, after 5 episodes, we're seeing he's like, damn, maybe there is a better life outside these 4 walls.
Yeah.
I have to say I like Doctore or Animeus. That's his real name, because other than Varro, who isn't getting much screen time, he's probably Doctore is probably the only honorable person in the entire season, because he's not scheming. He actually believes the House of Batiatus is honorable. If you've seen the prequel, you understand why. He believes his master is an honorable man, and he favors Crixus because he's known Crixus a lot longer than he's known Spartacus. So he favors Crixus, even though Crixus is a damn prick. But when Batiatus realizes that everything is not as it seems, he still manages to keep his honor, and he doesn't change who he is. He's still an honorable, decent person, and even though he is a slave and he accepts his station in life, but he's like, hey, I could be in a worse position or a worse place than anyone. So that's why I like his character. I don't dislike Spartacus, even though Spartacus is the main character, and I understand why he is the way he is. It puts me off sometimes, because sometimes it's like Animeus feels that Batiatus help him, and it's very hard for me to like Batiatus, because at first you're thinking Batiatus is really trying to help Spartacus, but that's all I gotta say. I don't want to spoil episode 6.
Let's focus on the content of this episode, not
I don't want to spoil episode 6.
Not what's coming, because you can talk about why you dislike people when things happen.
Sure.
Inside Man, anyone in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I've been with Crixus pretty much all the way from episode 1, and I'd agree with exactly.
I think Blue and Inside Man have just picked Crixus because there's a wiener shot in Leroy, can you eat your big pot of Skittles any quieter?
Sorry.
Anyway.
Lemonhead.
So, for me, this is quite a hard choice, because everybody, for me, in this episode is on their game with their acting ability. Whatever their acting ability is, they're pushing it.
I agree.
And it's an ensemble.
It's a great ensemble episode. All the characters have.
It really is.
All the characters have interesting scenes. I particularly like John Back's portrayal, but I don't think he has a better episode than this, where he gets a much more interesting scene and dynamic. I think Theocles is really well visualized, and I think that whole battle scene is done really well. That battle scene actually could have been 2 or 3 minutes longer, in my opinion. It was a little bit quick.
No, I thought it was fine. I mean,
I think it could have been a little bit longer. I think they could have played once he got back up and he started fighting them. I think that could have gone on a little bit longer before Crixus went down.
Yeah.
But it's a minor quibble. I still think it's really well done. It's one of the best fights of its type I've seen. Batiatus really great in this episode. But I'd probably give the episode to I'm gonna give it to Navia, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't see how much.
Right. Well,
except in the second season.
I think she steals the episode quite well with her Crixus storyline, and I can't vote for Crixus as well, because otherwise we'll get accusations of gayness. Right?
Yeah, leave it there. Leave it there, blue collar loser.
While you're on that shot, let's talk about this.
They're said to be ravenous beasts. Make him do it again.
Okay, well, we've got some. There's not loads of sex in this episode. There's a little bit.
No.
There's certainly a big sex scene coming in episode 6, which we'll talk about in a moment. There is nudity, of course, but the fight itself in that 300 cartoonish way is quite violent. Don't put the penile shot up, will you? Because we don't want to get
It wouldn't. Yeah.
I don't want to
wanna
poke
get-
my eyes out.
don't want to get flagged. So let's talk about the nudity first. We'll go each in turn. Blue Collar, does the nudity in this episode feel justified?
Well, in this one, yes, because I'm not going to show it obviously, but she's looking. Remember, Crixus and Spartacus, all these gladiators, they look at them like prize ponies, and that's how she's looking at him. She's looking at Crixus and Spartacus like they're just they're slaves. They're just there to be used as objects. So she's making Crixus get naked because she wants to see everything about him, and like if she wants to eventually buy him. And of course, because Lucretia does love him, she wants her to use her father's political power to spare Crixus going to fight this guy because he might get killed. So like the sex scene, it makes sense in terms of like you said, they look disgusted, but this woman's fawning over this guy that they love, but because she's looking over like he's a prized mare, he's a stallion horse. So I was fine with it.
Hey, Darth Plato.
Darth Plato is in the house. Darth Plato, do you think the level of nudity in this scene is in this episode is justified?
I'm sorry, I was getting my mic set up. You asked about the level of nudity. What
is it justified / appropriate? Should there be more? Should there be less?
I'm inclined to say. I'm inclined to say no.
It's not justified. Explain further.
Inside the ludus, I could kind of see that. It depends on how you carry yourself.
The main scene we're talking about is when Crixus is asked to disrobe.
Oh, I see what you're talking
that's the
about.
Main news. I mean, that's the main.
Okay, and that
there's some women's boobs in the arena, so I guess we can talk about that as well. But
please, yes, please.
Yeah, because there was a historical context.
Wait your turn inside, man. So Darth, your thoughts on the nudity in this episode?
In that particular scene, I think it's historically context is just fine.
Okay. What about the Crixus moment?
That's the scene I was referring to.
Oh, okay. And in the
oodling him.
Yeah, and in the arena.
It's the same. In the arena, people just let it hang.
Right. Okay.
I mean, look at the Olympics. In the old days of the Olympics, they all participated in the nude.
Right.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And I mean, in the Paris Olympics, in the opening ceremony, some people did that as well. So there you are. Inside Man, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was quite scathing about it last week, but fully justified. I mean, completely agree with both Darth Plato and Blue Collar Luther in both respects. The Crixus scene, and of course, I'd never object to anyone flashing their boobies. Get out, hey.
Sorry, mate, you set that up. I couldn't resist.
I shouldn't have paused.
Shouldn't have paused. No, don't pause when you're going to say that.
Okay. Right.
So all the stuff in the arena all felt appropriate.
I thought so. Yeah,
Leroy.
Yeah.
I felt the nudity was appropriate, both Crixus and in the arena. In fact, I'm almost jealous of Crixus because I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Up until I joined the military, women were repulsed by me. I never had women fawn over me as they fawn over Crixus. And until I joined, I don't know if it was the uniform I wore, but that's when I started getting ladies. And
right. Well, women do like a man in uniform, so women like a man in uniform. That's what they say.
Well, that's not always true, but I will say that women started to pay attention to me when I was in the military. But Crixus, man, just for that scene alone, I would love to be Crixus. Just have Alithia.
I won't dig into the detail of that, but very good. Let's move on to the violence. We've got a fight scene which is pretty gory, and it's fairly intense. Fair bit of blood. It's all quite cartoonish, 300, that kind of thing. By the way, I thought the nudity in this episode was fine. Got any additional comments to make about it? In terms of violence for this, my thoughts are on this is it's very well realised, and it's. I mean, at the point where the sword goes right into that guy, and he still carries on fighting,
Mm.
and also some of these cuts here, we
Adrenaline's a hell of a drug.
we are now straying very much into the realm of fantasy, right?
Mhm.
And for me, that's fine because it's that kind of show. It's that 300 comic book, style show. This show was also realized as a graphic novel as well. So so it works. It's fine, and sort of feels appropriate. You're not going to put your 5-year-old kid in front of it, but it all works for me. Blue.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, because and it's hard, Lance, because people say that with fantasy, but in real life, I mean, people have survived some things that would make sense to us. A man that's like 7'2", 350 pounds, all these initial cuts are like superficial, and it's just like they're not like really deep cuts as of right now. So I could see them just basically knocking him out. They're slashing the base of his skin, and it's almost like, yeah, you idiots think you won. Then he gets up. Okay, I was testing you guys. Now it's my turn. Then he gets up. Okay, hey. Now I'm going to fight. Shall I begin? I'm just warming up, guys. And I could see that. I mean, athletes do it all the time. Some boxers get hit a little bit. Now I'm serious. Then when he gets serious, they're like, oh, shit, we're screwed.
Case in point, Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
Darth, on the violence.
It's cartoonish, but I love the show partially because of that. I wouldn't call it historical.
No, well, we've already discussed the historical merits of this episode. Inside Man.
Well, I mean, as we know that the Roman times were incredibly violent. What they perceived as being everyday entertainment, was to us hideous, absolutely hideous forms of violence. If anything, I think there's the violence is probably tamer than the reality of it. I mean, it obviously is cartoonish and it is for television, and you can only do so much anyway. But I think it's fully justified. I actually would have liked to have seen it perhaps a little bit more, a little bit more blood spatter, a bit more sort of blood and guts. Yeah, I quite like film violence.
Also, wanted to you guys just to also show how big this guy is. Spartacus, he couldn't cut his head off in one hit. He was hacking like a freaking tree trunk. He's just like, like, you big son, go down already.
And Blue was right, because when you think about it, this guy's a big guy and everything. Nobody would. There's no way that anybody would possibly get near him. So that's why most of his wounds would be superficial. So,
and remember what Texas told Navia. It's not easy to cleave a man's head in one blow.
Especially one that size too.
Well,
not with a sword like that. No.
Leroy,
I'd say the violence was appropriate. If I may, I remember reading a backstory on Theocles, and it turns out the reason why he is the way he was because he fell in love with a woman, and he accidentally killed her while they were making love. Apparently, he was on top, and she was too small for him. At least that's what the story said.
There's no proof that Theocles actually existed.
I know. I'm just reading it was a graphic novel, the backstory.
That's okay. So you're talking about the backstory to the fictional character of Theocles.
Exactly. That's what I was talking about.
Just to be clear for anyone.
Yeah.
Listening.
I thought it was kind of funny though, but that's the way. That's why he was so. I guess that's why he was so mean, because I guess he tried. You talk about being institutionalized. He tried the civilian life. He tried to fall in love with a woman, and he accidentally killed her while they were making love. So,
a little bit like Roscoe Arbuckle then.
Who's Roscoe Arbuckle?
Roscoe Arbuckle, or otherwise known as Fatty Arbuckle. Yeah, silent movie
story
star.
For another time.
Yeah. But I thought the violence was appropriate. I mean, I really don't have any negative thing. Unlike episode 6, I don't have any negative thing to say about the show.
Okay,
mean,
well, let's move on. So we'll get on to different topic.
They cheer for blood, and they shall have it.
My favorite scene in this episode, and there are many, because I could quite easily just say the fight, which is excellent, very well realized, the best fight in the show to date. But it's not my favorite scene in the episode. My favorite scene is probably the scene with when the gladiators are paraded before Ilithia and Lucretia at Ilithia's request, and the way that whole dynamic plays out in that scene between the different characters, with Navia watching, looking at Crixus trying not to look at her, Lucretia becoming more and more disgusted because Ilithia is fawning over her, not only her prized possession, but also the person that she actually now loves, which we really see in this episode. So Ilithia is completely pushing the boundaries of their friendship, even unknowingly, because she doesn't know that Crixus is Lucretia's lover. So the dynamics of that scene are as much with what's not said, and in the performances and the looks. It's a really masterclass in acting, that scene.
It's my favorite scene too. So just so that you can just skip past me. That's my favorite scene too.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So that for all those reasons, that's why I like that scene. I think.
Brilliant.
I mean, like I said, there are many good scenes in this, including when John Hannah murders the family. You know, murders the. That's a great scene as well. But I think overall, Blue got a favorite.
Yeah, just the scene with Crixus and trying to pull up on Flex, but I'll find exact line in a second once the commercials are done. But he asked Spartacus, like, is that why? He's like, basically, like, your wife, is that why you refuse to die? And just find that strength, and like maybe find the strength of giving him a purpose. But once the episode, I'll get in a second the exact line.
He's tying that into his growing feelings for Navia, isn't it? Which is yeah. Darth, do you have a favorite scene?
My favorite scene is the training scene between Doctor and Spartacus and Crixus working together. I just really like that scene.
Right. Yeah, that is
fight as one or die as two.
Yeah, I like that. So Inside Man, you've answered the question already. Leroy.
Yeah. I have to say, believe it or not, my favorite scene was the ending when after Spartacus killed Theocles and the rain came.
Yeah,
and people started screaming out his name, Spartacus. It was, to me, that was like the redemption of Spartacus after the last episode. So
and there's also some interesting things happening in that sequence. I'm not just talking about the flashes of boobage in the crowd.
No, I'm not talking about that neither. I'm talking about, it's like he's like fully redeemed himself in the eyes of Badiatus, in the eyes of Capua, and
but also what's going on with Lucretia in that scene is really interesting. If you watch her face, she's like absolutely horrified that now this guy has got the favor of the crowd, because she knows now it's going to be even more difficult.
Yeah, she never liked Spartacus. She never understood why her husband bought him, and throughout the show Spartacus caused Lucretia and Badiatus to butt heads because of her hatred of Spartacus.
My favorite,
I'd say that scene is my favorite. Can I say what my favorite line is, though?
Yeah, I was just about to get into that.
My favorite line was, believe it or not, when Spartacus is trying to convince Crixus that they need to work together, and Crixus is like, I accept my place here. All you ever talk about is that wife of yours.
Yeah.
One day it's just a dream, Spartacus. One day you're gonna wake up, you'll find out the truth. You'll never leave this place. And that wife of yours, if she's not dead already, she's been fucked
by 500 Romans.
100 Roman cocks. And Spartacus that was my favorite line right there.
Yeah, and it's 500.
500. I thought it was 100.
My favorite line in this episode is a toss-up between when they're when they're training.
Yeah.
Actually, it's before the training. It's the line where Spartacus says, "If we do not find common ground, we'll die as one." So that line I really liked. But I think probably, and it's just a really subtle, simple one. It's probably Stolonius where he says to Batiatus, when Batiatus thanks him for offering them water, his comeback line is, "You do the same for me if you were able." If you were able, which you're not because you're poor and you don't have water. That's basically what he's saying. It's so loaded. And Batiatus gets the best lines every time. I mean, sorry, Salonius gets the best.
Yeah.
He gets the best put downs. Blue, did you have one?
Oh yeah, no, I pulled up right here. There you go.
Titus Cavalius, present to you the final event.
You woman.
Of blood.
Is she the reason you refused to die?
Yeah, there you go. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's my favorite line, by the way. That whole exchange.
Okay, we've Inside Man's device has gone off, although he is still in the green room, so I'll bring him back in a sec.
I was wondering what happened to him.
So what are we giving this episode out of 10? And if you're in the chat and you want to give it a rating out of 10, please do.
I give it 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10 from Leroy.
10 out of 10.
Blue?
I'll go 9.
Yeah, this episode's got a current rating of I think it's 8.9 on IMDb. It's one of the higher rating ones. 8.9 out of 10. Darth?
I give it an 8.
Yeah, I give it an 8.5 for me. Inside Man is back. There we go. What would you give this episode out of 10?
7.
7. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's high rating for you, though, as we know.
Hey Lance, I want to ask you guys. I'm sure, like you and Inside Man would know more. Did you notice that say at the end, directed by Michael Hurst? Like, you guys know who Michael Hurst is?
I know who he is.
Let me.
Can I say it?
I did mention that it was directed by him at the beginning of the stream, but no, I didn't reference other things he's done.
Michael Hurst played Aeolus, Hercules' sidekick, in the Legendary Adventures of Hercules with Kevin
God, yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Which of course, so that ties in.
Lawless.
Yeah, that ties into Lucy Lawless. Also ties into Rob Taper, who's producing Spartacus. So
right.
But after Hercules, Michael Hurst got really big into directing. He's done a lot of directorial stuff after Xena and Hercules went off the air. So instead, directed.
Yeah,
there he is.
Yeah,
and both of them are probably not friends with Kevin Sorbo anymore with his racist ass.
Why? What happened to Kevin Sorbo?
That's long. That's another tangent. He's
okay. Let's not go there then.
Yeah, exactly. So he's become a very good director after in the past at least decade. He's done a lot of directing.
Yeah. Oh, good for him.
Yeah.
He did a great job directing this episode, especially the fight sequence, which
he was funny on Hercules, especially when he did his kung fu moves on the bad guys.
Yeah. I mean, and he directed various episodes of Hercules and Xena as well.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Let's move on to episode 6.
Okay, still ready.
I'll do a briefer breakdown. I mean, this is a pivotal episode primarily because of the ending. It's called Delicate Things. The majority of the plot basically revolves around the promise that Batiatus makes that Spartacus will soon be reunited with his wife, who's been found. She's only 2 days' journey away. At this very moment, sort of emissaries of Batiatus are on their way to ensure her safe passage, ensure her safe return. When he thanks him and says, "You're a man of your word," he says, "This is just the first of many rewards," which is really great. That's a great line. And for a minute, you actually believe Batiatus. You're kind of with him up to this point, and you start thinking, okay, maybe this guy has got some redeemable qualities, even though he's basically a slave owner. We sort of, you're not. It's well played in the sense that you believe him. The other thing that's the sort of subplot of this episode is that Asher now owes a huge amount of coin.
Mm.
Barker and Petrus are discussing their plot to leave. We also learn that Barker spared the life of the boy, so the boy is actually still alive. And Asher,
No, he was. He lied to Petrus. He lied to Petrus. He actually killed the boy, but he lied to Petrus because Petrus.
We don't know that yet, Leroy.
Oh, my bad.
We don't know that yet. We hear that, so that's what we believe because he says it. And Asher overhears all this information, so he knows that they're planning on escaping. So Doctore and Spartacus kind of have conversation about, how all this stuff is likely to play out once the wife arrives at the Ludus. They'll still have to sleep in separate quarters, this kind of thing. Now there's water everywhere. There's a very full-on sex scene with Lucretia being massaged by her slaves in the bath when Batiatus arrives, and they kind of have this sort of sex scene whilst talking about various schemes and money and all kinds of things. It's a mad scene. I showed it actually at a movie quiz one year. That scene. The rain continues.
I was very selective on stills for this scene, Lance.
Yeah,
it was hard.
That was very hard. That scene alone was very hard for me to watch.
So the rain continues pretty much throughout the episode. Let's get those up. Sorry. So it's constantly raining. Spartacus plots his escape once the wife arrives. There's kind of a fantasy scenario of how that might play out in his head, which he discusses with Navarro, and we kind of see him sort of killing all these Roman guards.
So 300.
Yeah. And then Navarro's kind of sort of counters that and says, "Yeah, I don't think that's your escape plan. I don't think that's going to work. That's doomed to fail." That. And so in the meantime, various other things happen behind the scenes. Spartacus has a lesson with the magistrate's son, Numerus, who we saw earlier, and he steals a dagger to aid his escape. Spartacus uses some of his winnings to buy wine and women for the gladiators, which is also part of his escape plan. Meanwhile, Batiatus is troubled by false news that Ovidius's son still lives, which is what Asher tells him. Asher uses this information to have Barker killed to avoid repaying the winnings that are owed to him. So the other big thing that happens in this episode is that Barker gets killed. In the end, Batiatus keeps his word of retrieving Sura, but their reunion is short-lived. She's basically been their convoy on the way back to the Ludus was attacked by bandits. She received wounds, and she dies in Spartacus's arms as their sort of cart arrives back at the Ludus. So that's basically the meat of the plot for this episode. It's directed by Rick Jacobson, different director from before. It's written by two people, Tracy Bellamo and Andrew Shambliss. And neither of them wrote any episodes yet, so it's their first episode. Quite a lot. Some fairly big things happen. It's not everybody gets as much. It's not as an ensemble as the previous one, but it's not far off. So quite a lot's going on in this episode. I'm not going to bother sort of digging into history because this episode entirely evolves around the fictional storylines of the characters of this show. We don't know when Spartacus's wife was killed or not killed in real life. With that's all down to speculation. There's no solid sources on any of that kind of information. So kind of pointless going there, really. But we can get into this section.
I swear to be burned, chained, beaten.
All of the characters, kind of their narratives all go further forward. We know, for example, that Asher is, he really becomes a villain in this episode. He's got no respect for his fellow gladiators. He's only interested in his own self-preservation, and that's really underscored in this episode. He's partly responsible for the death of Spartacus's wife, you know, and probably more things besides. Also, Petrus is now kind of under threat of potentially being made somebody else's boyfriend unwillingly. So there's all of that going on. Again, Lucretia is, you know, keen to continue her plots. They hear the news about the boy. Yeah, so there's a whole load of like mixed stuff happening. John Back, very good in this episode again. So I mean, we lose two characters in this episode. We lose Spartacus's wife for good, who we previously knew was alive, and we lose Barker, who's a great character actually. And it's kind of a shame that Barker wasn't in the show for longer, and he dies at the hands of his owner.
His death scene was horrible. Boy, he went out, man. They tortured him. Whew.
Yeah, he's tortured. I mean, he's betrayed for completely the wrong reasons. So you feel for him because he's been completely loyal to Batiatus.
But like, here's the worst scene though. When they find out that when Batiatus and Lucretia find out that Barker was loyal and that he did what he was supposed to do, Batiatus said he wanted his freedom. That's why he put so much money on the fight between Spartacus and Crixus against Theocles. Lucretia said a betrayal in its own right. So
and of course you've got Asher's motivation for wanting Barker dead as well.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
So he doesn't have to pay the debt he owes him.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah, which was a lot of money. Pretty interesting episode again. Acting all round in this episode's very strong. Alithia is not in this episode, so much to the relief of Inside Man. I think in the characters, this episode is really Nikki Tarabay, who plays Asher. This is really his episode, and also I think to a lesser extent it's Barker's, you know, because they both get quite a bit of screen time. They both get Barker is played by Antonio T. Mahoya, and when they cast him, he was basically discovered kind of teaching video to classes of kids, sort of kind of running like filmmaking courses to young
Hey,
students.
Lance.
Yeah.
Barker's just so you know, Barker is Hannibal's surname.
Hannibal Barker.
Yeah. Hannibal Barker. Yeah.
I like that. So they're kind of implying that's his backstory. That
I think it was kind of because he is a Carthaginian. Then anyone would be anyone from Carthage would be called Barker.
or more specifically a Punic.
Yeah.
When did Hannibal come in the timeline of the Third Civil War? Was it late?
Third century.
Third century BC,
third century
so about
BC.
the 220s to the 206.
So later.
No, before.
No, much before.
Much later. Much before. Yeah.
So at this point, Hannibal's already given the Romans a bit of a kicking.
The Punic War's over.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So he could have been sort of descendant from that line of warriors kind of thing. Coined to the purpose of wine and whores. What a great line. That's probably my favorite line of this episode. And of course she's fawning over Crixus, you know. Will he be able to heal? And this Medicus guy reminds me of like feels like a character that should be in the Asterix the Gaul village. This guy on the left here. Yes, Leroy.
Can I say why I don't like this episode?
No, say that at the end.
All right.
Just doing casting characters at the moment.
All right.
Anybody want to say anything else about the actors or the characters in this episode, Blue?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I mean, to me, Badiatus is just, it shows where he's at, because number one, he actually did order because when he first his last episode, take care of the child. He said take care of him. I'm like, maybe he meant, just toss him out, get rid of him. No, he actually meant killing this kid.
Yeah.
And now he's so wrapped up in his own BS that he doesn't even believe that, hey, I'm not lying, I'm telling the truth. I really did kill the kid, which you asked me to. He kills one of his most loyal men, and at the very end, the biggest FU, he comes across as being this honorable man, and I'm going to help Spartacus because I'm a man of my word, and I care, and I pay my debts. And at the end, he's like, yeah, well, I was true. I didn't lie. He was reunited with his wife, and he actually had his friggin' wife killed, but while also keeping his word in his own like fucked up roundabout way. So you kept your word, but then you still killed his wife, you bastard. Like, like they're reunited.
Yeah.
It's like, man, like it's now it's shown episode 6. He's been slimy so far, but this is to me the peak episode.
Yeah.
Seeing where he's at, because he's killing people, and he's a real piece of shit.
This is where you as an audience member proper despise him, and also Lucretia.
Oh, right there.
Look at that look on her face there. She likes
because first it's shock, then it's just like, then she looks over, she hates Spartacus that bad. She's happy that his wife his wife got killed in front of him. Actually, his wife died in his arms, and she's smiling like, oh man, yeah, you two, both of you.
Anything about the cast or the characters?
I'm going to dovetail what Blue said. Is I thought that Lucy Lawless's character was just absolutely demonstrated to be an awful human being. This episode really illustrates that. Spartacus, I think, is just his head is in the clouds the entire time. I didn't believe for 1 second that Batiatas was going to let them go. He's like, after that last fight, he's just literally going ka-ching, ka-ching. So I didn't believe for that whole scene there is it's melodramatic. I'm sorry, I don't like it.
Okay, this bit at the end. That's it. Well, we can talk about stuff we don't like.
Fair enough.
Leroy, cast and characters. Anything?
I thought the cast did, and the characters did perform well. Like I said about John Hannah and Lucy Lawless, and I agree with Blue Collar Loser. I mean, this episode really showed their true colors. Yeah, Batiatas was slimy, but this one he showed he's a real evil son of a bitch. Lucretia is just a bitch, and I want to feel bad for Spartacus, but he's no saint neither. He was plotting, and I'll get more on that later. But Andy, this scene right here, I almost cried in this scene because unlike Darth Plato, I was really hoping, Spartacus and his wife, I was really hoping something like this would not happen. I was not expecting it. I thought, maybe Batiatas was a good guy after all, despite him raping a slave girl and all that. But after this, I mean, I'm Blue Collar. You nailed it on the head, man. I hated just about everyone except Doctore and Varro.
Yeah.
Okay. Inside Man.
Well, up until now, there's been various levels of ambiguity about the character, so we didn't really know, their real persona. We didn't really get to know exactly who they are. This is the turning point episode where we know exactly who these people are now. We know who we're dealing with. And as everybody has said, I agree with everything that everyone has said, that these people are not nice people. Their colors have now been nailed to the mast, and we know exactly who we're dealing with now. And this is the kind of next episode, let's bring it on. It's that kind of episode. Brilliantly acted all the way through, every single character. I loved it. I
like the fact that they're able to Barker, who previously is a character that you're not really that sympathetic with, because he's a bit of a bully, kind of like Crixus's sort of sidekick. And then gradually you realize actually this guy, cares about the guy he's in love with, etc. There's a very telling line when actually, which denotes their relationship, where he says, "Once we leave here, I'll be yours to command," which is quite unusual when you consider that he's the more physical, dominant one in that relationship, purely from a physical perspective. Shows the nature of their, their kind of relationship is quite unusual, but in a way quite sort of endearing, I suppose. Not stereotypical, which I quite liked about it. Asher, as you say, characters in this episode really do become defined. You get a really good sense of where everybody is on the moral compass or not, so to speak.
And even right here, it's like, he's like, hey, because he thought that when he bought his freedom, he's taking him with him. He's like, oh no, he left and he's not bringing you. It's like he lied just to rub the dagger in that much more. He's like, he was to take me with him. No, once he's freed, he left and he forgot about you, dude. Like, oh man,
that was really mean as well. That was and then the other guy's already kind of eyeing him up like a piece of meat, sort of thing. That's pretty horrible.
The word you're looking for is catamite.
Yep. Yeah. There you go. Let's cover this.
Others are said to be ravenous beasts. Make him do it again.
Well, you've got one fairly full-on, quite full-on sex scene quite early on, which is more of a kind of family meeting during a sex scene. It's quite bizarre. But I do like the way that scene plays out, because again, it sort of just really underscores the property nature of the relationship between these two. Also, it makes you hate those two characters even more, which I think is good. Violence is pretty full on as well. I mean, Barker's death is pretty horrendous. It's
this scene here I hated the most. I mean, that wasn't a sex scene, that was a rape scene.
Well, I mean, it's well, it is what it is. It's him using a slave in the context of the story. But it's pretty horrendous. But there's a weird sort of the way it's constructed with them having this. You feel like this scene has been repeated dozens of times between these characters. You feel like this is a normal routine, because of the way they just have their conversation, like it's the most natural thing that they would have dialogue. Why he's bonking a slave, talking to his wife about how they're going to scheme about something.
And Lance, if you look at that scene, you could tell by the look on her face that that girl is not. I felt really, even though it's just acting, I felt really bad for that girl.
No, she would have been directed as an actress who would have been directed to say, we want you to play this like you're not enjoying it. This is we want to see that this slave doesn't like this. That I'm sure she was directed to do exactly that. She's got a weird expression on her face on the very last second of that scene, if you watch it though, which is quite odd. It's at odds with the rest of the scene if you watch it. Crixus going through his this is pretty gory as well, going through his very slow, painful healing process. Lots of cauterizing the wounds and so forth. I mean, I suppose the question is, do we feel that first scene with Batiatus and the slaves in the pool was too much? I actually think it's a very cleverly constructed scene, makes some very valid points by doing what it does, and it's in keeping with the tone of everything we've seen before. Definitely one of the stronger scenes though in the first season. Blue, your thoughts?
100%. It's like this scene, like Leroy said, it even small details, like he spits on his hand, and like it's gross, it's sickening, and that's the point. And it's showing more the whole depravity between him and his wife, and that's why I said, like with Darth Plato a couple episodes ago with the open marriage, I still feel like in a sense it is open marriage, because they're okay with both of them. Like she's watching him be with other women, even other slaves, in front of him, and it is uncomfortable, just showing how messed up of characters these two are. And so it's like, it's uncomfortable, but also it's supposed to be uncomfortable.
No, that's true. It is supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. Darth?
I just want to say that the closer you get to the 1st century AD, the more there was the idea among the Romans that having sexual relation with a slave was not acceptable
Right.
behavior. But that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. I mean, people can do anything they want inside their houses.
Right.
So,
Well, this is the
I don't
nature
know.
of the relationship with him and his wife, isn't it? So, you know, it's a kind of behind closed doors, him and his wife.
Yeah, I
type
know.
thing.
I think we could do without this scene, honestly. But
Okay, Leroy, any thoughts?
I strongly disagree with Darth Plato. As much as I hate this scene, and I really do, maybe because it's personal for me. It from a historical perspective, it's one of the reasons why I support critical race theory, because stuff like this happened in America. It happened around the world when it came to slavery. When left to our own basic evil desires, we inflict pain on other people. That's what this stuff reminds me of. And this act from his sport. I'm speaking from his as a historian.
Yeah, but that taking that as a given, why do you disagree with Darth and you think it should be in the show?
Because
it's an accurate representation of what happened in your view. That's your
a very accurate representation of what happened throughout history, not just in American history, but in Roman, Greek, in history. When you're a slave, your body is not your own. And
no, indeed. I mean that point is made quite strongly.
Well, sure, there's pleasure slaves throughout history. Yeah, that's true. They have it to this day. You don't have look. I don't disagree with that at all. But you don't have to be a believer in critical race theory to believe that. That's nonsense. Of course, we can stipulate that, regardless.
Yeah. Okay. Inside Man.
I think it was completely justified. As uncomfortable as it is, as unpleasant as it is, I think it really illustrates their relationship perfectly. You know, exactly what they're about. You know, we start to know so many different facets of these warped characters.
Yeah.
I don't like it. You know, obviously we're not meant to like it, but I think it was justifiably put in the show. And in terms of the violence, like I say, I think it, also very much justified violence.
Well, let's move on to this.
They cheer for blood, and they shall have it.
So I don't think anyone's going to be picking that scene for episode 6. But what is your favourite scene or line of dialogue for episode 6? Mine is probably the most powerful scene for this episode for me, which also I remember really got me in the feels the first time I watched it, was probably the death of Barker and how all that whole thing plays out. Because you're quite invested in him by then. It's quite clever that the show has got you that invested in him in quite a short period of time. In just a couple of episodes, you get quite invested in Barker. I think that's quite a good skill. I do like the scene at the beginning with Batiatas talking about when he says the line, "The new champion of Capua," and the look that Lucretia gives when that is said is that's a great moment as well. So my favorite line is probably that, "The new champion of Capua," but I think the strongest favorite is probably the wrong word, but the strongest scene for me in this episode is probably the death of Barker. Chew louder if you can, Leroy. Blue collar.
Sorry, man.
What's yours?
Just the death of Spartacus's wife, because we're 6 episodes in and his entire character arc. I mean,
that's pretty powerful as well. But I remember that scene didn't land with me as well as I thought it would. For some reason, but
it just did for me, because it's like now that his whole journey's been getting back to her and moving on his life with her. Now she's dead. Okay, we're only 6 episodes in, so it's like, well, now what?
Yeah.
I mean, because she was his whole purpose. You just destroyed Batiatas. Dude, you just destroyed his entire reason for living. So you may have created a monster, or he may just want to. Well, he doesn't obviously commit suicide. We have more seasons to go, but right now, storyline wise, so where's this? What's his whole character arc now? That she's been his character arc.
Yeah, I did wonder if I mean, we'll talk about it when we get to the end of season 1, but I did wonder if maybe they killed her too early in the show.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying, I'm just going by in terms of like right now and stuff, not the rest of the seasons. But we say right now, this episode, I'm like, okay, damn. When I'm watching it, we just killed her 6 episodes in. Is this like, how much longer would a show go when she's been the point of him? So now I'm intrigued to see what is he going to do next.
Yeah, what happens to him? I mean, it is a kind of, oh my God, I've got to watch the next episode now. I remember, saying that to my.
I'll follow up on that if you like.
Yes,
I
please.
think I would have been interesting instead of having this. So they have the reunion and Erin Cummings, that's whatever her name was in the story. I remember the actress name. What was her name? The actress?
Erin Cummings.
No, the character.
Syrah was her name.
Right. That she actually talks him out of doing this cockamamie plot of trying to escape the Ludus. That's a really crazy thing to do. I think that would have been more interesting, and or maybe have it like that she's actually injured and she can't really travel. That would have been. I think that would have been more interesting way to keep her around. I mean, we know that Spartacus is going to get married again, or maybe not married, but involved with somebody else. You just keep the same person.
Okay. Leroy,
I think. Oh yeah, we're talking about what's your favorite scene.
Favorite scene in this episode.
Well, that wasn't my favorite scene, but okay.
And/or line of dialogue. Darth, would you want to just backtrack quickly? Did you have a favorite scene or line of dialogue or both in this episode?
The scene that I don't know about my favorite scene, but the scene that I remember the most about this episode, to be fair, I haven't seen this episode in probably 10 years, is when he's sitting there with Doctore and he's manipulating the man. He's giving him a spiked drink. He's showing how even Spartacus can be a manipulative prick.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's why I didn't like this episode.
And
we'll come into that in a sec.
And Doctore didn't deserve that.
Of course he didn't.
Especially after sharing Spartacus his own past.
Now you could say maybe though he purposely knocked him out because his whole plan was to escape and he didn't want to fight Doctore out of respect. Yeah. Maybe we don't know, but that's the point of once remember he was actually reaching for his knife because he's going to take Gladiatus, use him as hostage and escape his wife, and he probably knew Doctore would stop him, so he drugged Doctore to sleep while he escaped his wife. So perhaps that's
he's still manipulating the situation.
Well, yeah, but I mean, but him, I can understand. It's like he's inadvertently a slave and just wants to leave with his wife. I mean, it's like they're all slaves. He's like, this isn't. I mean, they're all in permanent prison.
Yeah, but there's no place to go. He would have been hunted down like a dog. He doesn't know Italy. He has no idea. Idea what the place looks like beyond the streets to the arena.
Yeah, he's definitely not thinking that far ahead. For his mind, he's like, I just want to get my wife and get the hell out of here. I'll figure.
Well, I mean, Navarro points out to him, all your kind of supposed escape plans are all nonsense. I mean,
exactly. Yeah,
they do sort of take that on.
And to be fair, he probably didn't even know Latin.
No,
yeah.
But yes, but let's not go to that degree of realism here.
Fair enough.
Okay, so Leroy, favorite line or scene?
I'd say my favorite scene and favorite line was at the beginning when Spartacus is declared the new champion of Capua, and Gladiatus calls him the bringer. That's the first time we hear the line, "the bringer of rain."
Yeah.
So, out of this entire episode, I say that scene right there is my favorite.
Right.
And when around that same time when Gladiatus informs Spartacus that his wife's been found, Spartacus is about to cry, and Spartacus tells him, "You're an honorable man. Thank you." And if that was me, I've done that more. I would have given Gladiatus a hug and a kiss.
Inside Man.
Well, I'm not sure whether you're transmitting your thoughts to me or I'm transmitting my thoughts to you, but my favorite scene is exactly the same as yours. It's precisely that. But I just wanted to mention about keeping Spartacus's wife alive. I just all the way through, I did kind of think, how much of a story can we keep kind of trying to strain out of this, this one theme. I mean, okay, it's a big thread, but I just kind of think they couldn't squeeze too much more out of it. I mean, possibly. I mean, Darth Plato's suggestion. I think, it's actually quite a smart idea. They could have done if they'd gone with something like that. But maybe I don't know. I just, on the face of it, I'm not sure how much more they could have
I
squeezed
mean,
out of that.
I
that
guess
fight.
the payoff will on this will be, and I'm rewatching these as we're doing them, but from what I recall, down the road, he discovers the whole plot of the betrayal, and so that gives him. This sets up the motivation for him to hate Batiatus as much as we do by this point, because we hate him by this point. So we know that Spartacus is going to hate him just as much when he finds out, which is coming up. Yeah. Okay. So what would we give this? I like his new armor, by the way.
So do I.
Yeah.
I do like that outfit.
Yeah.
What would we give this episode out of 10? And just sort of final thoughts. I mean, I quite like the episode. I think it's pretty good overall. I'll probably give it about a 7.5 to 8. Blue.
Yeah, I'll go with a 7.
Okay. Darth.
You got a 5.
5. Harsh. Okay. Leroy, and you can say quickly why you didn't like it, or which bit you didn't like.
The reason why I didn't like the whole episode, and it wasn't that it was a bad episode, because I give it a 7 out of 10, is that there was just too much conniving and dishonor between the characters, and
that's what makes it good, man.
Yeah, but still,
that's a good thing. That's a good thing from a writing, dramatic, narrative point of view.
It was hard for me. I didn't even bother after this last time I saw it. I didn't even bother finish watching the episode because Spartacus, with his conniving, like Darth Plato said, he was a manipulative prick. What he did to Animaeus Animaeus didn't deserve that. Then Batiatus, we get to see the real Batiatus.
Right. So you're saying that detracts from Spartacus's moral standing as a hero in the story? Is that what
I really do. I really do.
I
wish Spartacus was more like Doctore.
I can buy into that criticism a bit more.
But I give it a 7 out of 10.
Okay. Inside Man.
Yeah, 7 as well. Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, these 2 episodes I thought were outstanding.
Yeah, the show is really and we're about halfway through. There's 13 episodes. It's kind of found its legs and is running now. So but we also have to give it these 2 episodes. So the History Bro rating of gayness, is it a little bit gay? There's some gay things happening. It's very gay or super gay. Where do
I'm gonna leave that alone.
Oh, I'm just playing it purely for comedy.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, it's got a lot of gay
days.
subtext in it, hasn't it? As a show, I think it's just given that it's got a lot of gay subtext.
It's not so much gay though. It's more like dominating another man. People know they didn't really think of it as gay. That's just more like how we think about it. We're projecting to the past when we talk like that. Alexander's father, Philip, raped one of his bodyguards. He didn't. I don't think he did it because he was gay. I think he did it because he was trying to show his body. That was a way of how they did it in those days. Sodomy was a way of doing that. It showed dominance over another person.
Asserting dominance over another individual.
That's right. That's more. It's not really the modern sense of orientation. If we went to the past and talking about orientation, they wouldn't know what the hell we were talking about.
So I do beg your pardon. Just quickly interjecting.
No,
you're absolutely right. I mean, I think we were talking about this last Sunday. That we have no real concept of the kind of moral compasses by which these people used. If we were if we were to be dropped into the past, we just wouldn't know how the whole thing works. It's, we're using our modern sensibilities and sensitivities to measure what they do. We're using our modern society and our modern morals as the yardstick. But for them, it wasn't really a case of, is somebody gay, or is somebody being violent, or is somebody a rapist, or is somebody a murderer. I mean, obviously they did have murder then, and they could be tried for murder. But yeah, it's easy for us to sort of project our modern self onto them, our modern morals onto them. But
I think also when you look at the Barker Petrus relationship, of which obviously the narrative of that kind of concludes over these 2 episodes, it's entirely plausible and reasonable to think, well, if a whole load of gladiators are cooped up and sharing the same quarters, and they probably did have younger boys that were there to do things like clean the armor, clean the swords,
and
clean the shit out of the bathroom and all the rest of it. It's just like it would happen in any environment like that. There are going to be different types of dynamics and relationships that are going to form within that environment, because that's what's available to you. It will just happen anyway. It would definitely happen. So the relationship with Barker and Petrus, I actually think it's quite well handled. It's not sort of, it's just played for what it is. It's very it's just played as very, this is how they are. It's not, there isn't sort of silly music or it doesn't have any fanfare. It's just like the rest of the show. It's kind of, it's in your face, but in the right way, as opposed to, it doesn't, it didn't feel like they were deliberately trying to run up any flags or anything like that. It's like,
it's not divisive. Exactly. It's not divisive, and it's not, there's no kind of preachiness about it. There's no pandering about it. It's, this is this is 2 gay men, and so what? This is 2 gay men.
Okay, so that's,
I'd like to follow up on that, if I may, because we didn't talk about the history.
Bring your
part
gay
earlier.
expertise to the
we'd like to talk about the scene with Clavius. Actually, everything about Clavius up to this point is the Romans in those days had a concept that was called infamy. So musicians, pimps, actors, gladiators, even a lanista would fit into that category.
We actually did talk about this, funny enough. So I'm sorry, I beg your pardon.
Blue sort of mentioned this about where they come in standing.
But this show doesn't really respect that. See, a man like Clavius would never put his arm around Batiatus in a public setting and say, "This is my guy." He wouldn't do that,
right?
Because someone like Batiatus would be infamy.
Right.
A man of station, especially, I don't know if Clavius is in the Senate, but Albinius certainly is. There's 3 words that are very important to Rome in that time period. There was virtus, auctoritas, and dignitas. Now, the latter point, what I want to call attention to. They were practically prudish, almost Amish, in their public demonstration of how clean they were. They were very careful about how they were perceived in public. So he would never put his arm around someone like that. It would have ruined his career. Let me give you an example. So, like, take Mark Antony, for instance. Mark Antony kissed his wife in public one time. He was almost expelled from the Senate for that.
Right.
For that.
Yeah, and there was also a senator, I think, a case of a senator that was holding hands with his wife in public.
That's right.
And exactly the same.
And they showed in the earlier episode with Albinus in his house. He had guests over at his house. There's people like gyrating in the corner or having sex in the other corner. That never would have happened. He would have been ruined in an afternoon if he'd done something like that. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to comment on is about Alithia herself. Is that her name, Alithia?
Yeah,
Alithia.
Okay, Alithia is a Greek name. That's not a Roman name. So setting aside for a moment, Roman names for daughters were always based on their nomen. Roman
Yeah.
higher Roman tend to have three names.
Yeah.
There was called a prenomen, a nomen, and a
A
cognomen.
cognomen. Yeah.
Yeah, the prenomen was their common name, like Titus, or Gaius, or Decimus, or whatever. The middle part of the name, the nomen, was basically your clan name. That was the clan from which you descended, which could be centuries old. Your cognomen was your more immediate family's name that is descended from that clan, like Gaius, Julius, Caesar. So that your daughters will be named after your nomen. So Julius Caesar's daughter was Julia, Marcus Tullius Cicero. Therefore, his daughters would have been Tullia, etc. And this is true regardless of how many daughters you have. So if you have 4 daughters, they're all named Tullia. If you have like Quintus Caecilius, Metellus, because they were all be named Caecilia. There were exceptions to this if you had a really prominent daughter and you didn't want to cause confusion about who you were referring to. So there was one exception, the Caecilius family, where one of them was named Metella, but those were just exceptions to the rules. So I'm not exactly sure why Alithia is called Alithia. I mean, really, she should be called. I don't even know Albinus' full name. Why is he called Albinus? Albinus should be the name. Albinus is the Latin word for white, and that was a name that was used in those days. So I guess you can almost call her Albinia, but I guess that would just sound weird.
I'm so pleased that you actually brought this up, because it kind of and Darth Plato, you will know exactly where I'm going with this, about the name Maximus Decimus Meridius. Is completely wrong.
Yes, it's all back. It's all inverted.
It's back to front. It's the prenomen. I mean, the cognomen is Maximus.
That's right.
And
That's right.
the prenomen is Meridius, and the nomen is Decimus. So it's Meridius Decimus.
Decimus would be the prenomen. The prenomen.
Oh, it's the prenomen, is it?
Yes.
Oh, I thought Decimus was the nomen.
No. There was a fourth name. There was also an agnomen, but that was usually something that you got as part of a victory.
His agnomen is actually mentioned, isn't it? His agnomen is mentioned in, I think it's by Cassius, when he's talking about when he's in the arena and just about to introduce Maximus, and he mentions his agnomen. But yeah, it's bizarre.
An agnomen would be like an example of an agnomen would be like Africanus, like Publius Cornelius Cicero Africanus, and he got that because he won the war in Africa.
Yeah.
Another example would be Quintus Caecilius Metellus Numidicus, because he fought the war against the Numidians. But in theory, a Roman could have their name however long they want. I saw an example in school where a guy had like 15 names on one name. It was just all one name. So they could do it however they wanted.
The arrogance of some people.
That do you know what? I never knew that before. That, like, for example, if you were you earned a name because of a military campaign you conducted. You know.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
Another one with Macedonicus. That was another agnomen.
There was one theory, I think, that was by the historian Simon Elliott. It talks about the Caesar nomen, cognomen, and he said that in Phoenician, Caesar, or as it's pronounced in ancient Latin, Kaiser, as exactly as it's pronounced in German. Apparently is Phoenician for elephant.
Right.
So I think it was Simon Elliott, the historian. I think it was him that mentioned, it's entirely possible that Kaiser or Caesar does come from elephant.
I've never heard that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I have to look that up. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, and and he's got a couple of very, very good books out. Actually, I've just got one about Pertinax, actually, and he's done one on Septimius Severus, which that's his more recent one. So that's worth getting.
Anyway, the whole point of this entire line of thought is I would want to call attention to Alethea's name was, I think, they kind of lazily named the character. It's a Greek name, not a Roman name.
I don't care. She's got a pretty face and amazing rack to me. So she's still an evil bitch.
Okay, right. Well, on that bombshell, we're going to wrap it up there. Want to mention briefly what I've got coming up. So on Wednesday at 9:30 UK time, I have got another rather good interview booked that all fell into place quite quickly. So I wasn't expecting it to happen for a few weeks at the earliest, but now we've got we've lost Darth Plato. Okay.
Yeah. What happened?
So well, he may have had. Oh no, he's back. I think he just got technical things. There we go.
Darth Plato.
Darth, I thought I was boring you already. So I have got
Hit the wrong button. Sorry.
I've got film director Tom DeCilo coming on the channel on Wednesday at 9:30 p.m. He's kind of considered to be one of the great independent film directors, and many people will know him from writing and directing the film Living in Oblivion, which is set on a movie set, which actually was a mandatory watch for my crew on one of my movies. Remember, we all sat down to watch this film. It's also the movie that introduced the world to Peter Dinklage. There he is. And Tom also directed a number of other movies, including Double Whammy, The Real Blonde, Delirious. He also gave Sam Rockwell his first break. Worked with a very young Matthew Modine, launched the career of Catherine Keener, who we can see in the background of this shot, who's a fantastic actress. So I'm really looking forward to talking to him. He's also an accomplished musician. He just sent me his album, which I just finished listening to earlier. So he's going to be an excellent guest. Really looking forward to having him on at 9:30. The next week, I've got director of photography Roy Wagner coming on. That's on Friday. So 2 more interviews this month. Still trying to see if I can get to 100 before the end of the year. It's going to be a bit tough, but I'll be up to 74 soon. So certainly getting there. Roy Wagner worked on a number of shows as director of photography and a number of movies. In particular, he did 7 episodes of Quantum Leap. He was the DOP on Nick of Time, which is one of my favorite Johnny Depp movies. If you haven't seen it, you should. I think it's really good. Also stars Chris Walken as the main bad guy. But he's
Blood and Bone.
He's got 94 credits. He's got 94 credits as a DOP. He's also did one of the Nightmare on Elm Street films. He's done episodes of Ray Donovan, Elementary. So this is very, very much a jobbing man. He's going to have lots of interesting stories, I'm sure. He's done 36 episodes of House MD, which was a massive series in its day. Worked on CSI, Cold Feet, Fantasy Island, The Plane, Boss the Plane. Sorry, I can't resist that every time.
So the original Fantasy Island.
That looks like the remake from the 90s. I didn't even know they'd done a remake in the 90s there. 98.
That kind of tells you something, doesn't it?
10 episodes. Yeah, well, probably wasn't that. I know they just did a movie, which was also kind of doubling as a pilot for a new TV show. But more importantly, he did 9 Deaths of the Ninja. So looking forward to getting into that one. But Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors.
That was a good movie.
Yeah, it was one of his first big DOP jobs. So looking forward to talking to him about all of the above. So and I've got biographer and author Wayne Byrne to thank for setting up both of those for me. He introduced me to Roy some time ago and also helped facilitate things with Tom. So Wayne, who's been on my channel many times, a huge debt. Wayne has just written a book an autobiography book on Tom DeCillo, and I've literally received a PDF of that book from his publisher while we were live on air. So I've got to dive into that and read as much of it as I can before Wednesday evening. We have got the Nielsen ratings tomorrow at the usual time. That should still be happening. If for any reason I have to postpone, I'll let you know, because I'm going to try and watch whatever stuff of Tom's I haven't seen tomorrow and Wednesday daytime. And I've also got 2 scripts that I really need to get some work on, which is impossible to write in this kind of heat. It's not a good weather condition for writing dialogue, I can tell you now. So Blue, you got anything coming up you want to plug?
I mean, I'm just working on trying to get my Borderlands video out today and that new Cuckoo, which I'll tell you guys about tomorrow. And I've kind of just been slowing down with work stuff, but definitely this week going to see Alien Romulus, and a lot of us looking forward to it.
Yeah, that comes out on Friday.
Yeah, Thursday for me. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm hoping to
I hope it's better than the other prequels.
Well, so far the director, he promised that he's going back to practical effects, and everybody here, we love that. I mean, I've seen the behind the scenes of the face huggers, like how they made them like the digital cars, but all the face huggers are actually built. They're having guys back in the xenomorph suits. They swear they're using as little digital as possible. They're trying to make it like the aesthetics of Alien 1, and Aliens, Alien 2. So we'll see.
Okay. Darth, you got anything you want to plug, buddy?
Nothing beyond everybody should subscribe to your channel.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much, man.
And watch his movies. Watch The Journey. It's a good movie.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind. Inside Man.
We're going to be joining you tomorrow for the Nielsen ratings, and I have 3 very interesting little numbers to talk about.
Well, it would be. Now I don't feel like I can postpone. Razorhead, thanks for popping into the chat. We are just wrapping things up, but I do appreciate you popping in.
We've got Northern English Bastards stream on A Touch of Evil on Friday, which I'm really looking forward to. And possibly...
Is that the 90s thing, A Touch of Evil?
No, that's the Orson Welles...
Oh, yeah, you're not talking about... and there was also a TV series called that, wasn't there? About people that kind of investigated serial killers. It was sort of ran on ITV.
Oh, right.
I think for maybe 1 or 2 seasons. It wasn't like massive. Jacob Ironside said, I would have watched this show if it wasn't for all the sexual content. There are ways to show it that are not so gratuitous. Please include more. I mean, it's not a show for everybody. Joking aside, it's not a show for everybody, and I would completely understand if some people found the sex and violence in it too offensive. I mean, that's fine, as long as they don't try and stop us from watching it. That's fine.
Exactly.
So Leroy, you want to plug anything quickly? I know your book.
Well, good news. The first book, my Frontier series, Face the Sun, just got a glowing review from Roundup Magazine, which is part of the Western Writers of America Association. And the 3 books in my Frontier series are still in the top 100 in Kindle on Amazon. So, and after this, probably an hour or so, I'm going to get back to writing. I'm working on the second book, my Jonah Chamberlain series, and I hope to finish that by at the latest mid-September, at the earliest the end of this month. So I got to start on chapter 8 tonight, chapter 9.
How many pages do you normally write in a day?
I usually
roughly
between 1,300 to at most 3,000 words.
Yeah, so that's between 3 to 6 pages, give or take, isn't it? Roughly.
Yeah. And on this second book, my Jonah Chamberlain series, I've been writing over 2,000 words a chapter.
Right.
and I've never done that before. With the first book, I was writing over two. That was the first time I was writing over 2,000 words a chapter. So, I have a really good feeling about these books. By the end of this year, I already published 4 books this year, 2 in May. This will be my 5th book.
Wow.
And I hope to finish.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
He's a machine. He's like me on a good day.
3 of my books already are still in the top 100 bestseller in Kindle on Amazon.
That's amazing.
That's the entire Frontier series.
Just goes to show people like reading about cowboys.
So mountain men, not cowboys, mountain men.
Well, mountain men during the cowboy era.
This was before the cowboy era. This was way before the cowboy.
I don't mean literally the cowboys as portrayed in Tombstone. I mean the Western era.
Yeah.
So, well, let's wrap things up there. Just reminds me to thank my panel who came in at the last minute because we weren't scheduled to do this tonight.
Thank you, Lance.
But fortunately, because House of Dragon wasn't available, we had to talk about something, and this was postponed from yesterday. It is normally going to be sometimes start time between 8 or 9 on a Sunday. Normally, I think there will be one Sunday where we won't be doing it, probably the last one in August. I think I need to check something about my availability for that. But anyway, we've also got the Nielsen ratings on Tuesdays, of course. And I'll be popping up and doing some gaming streams and other things. And, of course, all the interviews that I've previously mentioned. So that's it from us for this evening. Thanks to my panel, Leroy, Blue, Darth Plato, and the Inside Man, a.k.a. Retropolis Now. We'll be back again talking about more sex and violence from Spartacus really soon. Until then. Oh no, we're still live!
Yeah, we are still live.